Hello, and welcome to video 3 of our Unlocking Big Magic videos. I'm Leslie Pyne, author of Finding Joy Beyond Childlessness, blogger and all-round creative. And I'm going to hand you over now to Kelly because she's going to introduce herself and set us off.
Hi, yes, I'm Cali Bird. I love to blog about creativity. I do that at a blog called Gentle Creative. I've recently published a novel, which today is not behind me, having a change of scenery for this one. We like to chop and change around, but you'll see the book on other episodes if you watch others of them. It's called Tales of the Countess. So yeah, we're talking. So Leslie and I think we've said this before, we are Liz Gilbert groupies. We love Liz Gilbert. Big Magic is an amazing book about creativity. You may or may not be a fan of Liz Gilbert's other very, very famous books. People love it or hate it. Even if you're in the hate camp, this is a very good read on creativity in the widest sense, not just art with a capital A, but in sort of creative living, arts and crafts, anything that you really want to do that's a little bit out of the ordinary, really, and following curiosity. And really we're finding it's a handbook to sort of blow through any excuses that you might have as to reasons you can't do that, really. So we're on chapter 3, which is about permission. So it's permission to give yourself to say yes, you can create, you can write, you can paint, you can do embroidery, you can bake cakes, whatever it is. And Leslie and I were just discussing this before we started recording, and really we feel she's going through piece by piece any excuse that you tell yourself, really, isn't she? So we'll cover those one at a time.
And it's like, how do you stop yourself, isn't it? This is that chapter on what do you do, what do you say?
It's okay.
Yeah.
And really it's an internal battle, and it is okay for you to do this.
Exactly.
So the chapter starts, she talks about her own family, really, and on one hand quite conservative parents, but also quietly rebellious. Her dad decided he, as well as being an engineer or whatever he was, he wanted to farm Christmas trees, so he did. It's quite an off the wall thing to do. And she also then makes the point that if we go back to, I don't know, our parents, grandparents, if you go back a couple of generations from today, she says everyone were makers. You know, people made their own clothes, they had vegetables in their garden, they made their chutneys from that. You know, people made cakes, they made their meat puddings, they didn't go to the supermarket and buy them like we do now. And that making things really wasn't a big deal. And I think we've lost touch with that, because now on the whole, we buy everything, and we've lost touch with that creative root. So now when we do create stuff, it's a big deal. And then we get all this resistance and our inner fears and everything coming up. That makes it harder for us to enjoy doing that. So I think really that's the real first thing she says, you know, until recently people were makers. And what's interesting is the pandemic, isn't it? Because I think people are rediscovering that. As you know, we're in the end of 2020. A lot of people have been in lockdown, and people have been gardening, and they have been baking cakes, and they have been making things, and that's been fantastic. And you've been doing some of that as well, haven't you, Liz?
I have, actually, and I was just thinking, actually, the other thing I think she says was things that. Some of what people made was out of necessity. You know, they had to bake their own pies because there was nowhere to go and buy them, or they couldn't afford it. But they also lots of people made things prettier and more beautiful than they had to be. You know, if you look at pots from the Roman age, some of them are far prettier than they need to be. So I think that's that. And I look at my mum. I mean, she was very, very creative, and she went to evening classes and all sorts of things. You know, even though she was busy and had a full-time job and looked after my dad and myself, it's just like she gave herself permission to learn, to go off and try new things, which is kind of what I like to do, actually. And that sort of moves on to permission, isn't it? I think that's sometimes it's we feel that we can't do it until somebody else gives us permission, but at the end of the day, you know, you have to give yourself permission to do this stuff, don't you? I love, as you will already know, I love Brené Brown, and she talks about permission slips, and she sort of that I think the first time she wrote one of those for herself, she was going to be interviewed by Oprah, and she felt that she wasn't being her authentic self, because she had certain, you know, she had to be like this with Oprah and all this. But then she gave her permission, wrote on a post-it note, which I should have got here, but I haven't.
Yeah.
I give myself permission to be goofy, to laugh, to cry, or whatever she felt she needed in order to be authentic. And I think that for me, it's like, yeah, I give myself permission for my creative stuff not to be perfect.
That's a good one.
Just to do it, actually, to try to play. I know if you were to, if I have friends for dinner, I often try something new. And I know it won't look like it looks in the book, but it'll taste good. So I give myself permission to play, to try, you know, sort of that's that thing, is that I don't let that stop me personally, but I know lots of people do. So.
Yeah, it's that experimenting, isn't it? Spirit of experimentation.
Exactly.
And actually, that's where discoveries are made. And I think she talks about that in this chapter, in this section as well, doesn't she?
She does.
And that's, you know, I guess that's how human beings made progress over the ages, because we had to go at something and some stuff didn't work and some stuff did.
Exactly.
And not to be afraid of that. Yeah, I like the permission slip thing, because I often, I think, because I sort of deal with more sort of artistic creativity, and I write, and sometimes, you know, like I do it alongside a day job, and lots of people who follow my blog do that too. And sometimes you can think, yeah, it's frivolous, or should I be spending time doing this? So many other family things to do, or so many problems in the world. You know, I write about talking handbags. Okay, that's what's in Tales of the Countess. And one could say that, you know, really ought to be spending my time on more worthy causes. But if I didn't do that, I would go bonkers, and I have in the past, and I wouldn't be any good to anyone else. Anyway, I think we have to fulfill this need. It's like you have to be. It's almost like you have to be selfish to be unselfish, don't you?
Exactly.
Because we think it's selfish to do this, but actually, until you need to nurture yourself in order really to be a good person for other people around you, or for society. It's a balance between self and others, and I think a lot of people struggle with that. And I loved that permission slip idea, because I think a lot. People need to write themselves a permission slip. It's okay to do this. You know, it's okay to do it badly. And it's okay to screw it up. And it's okay not to earn a living. It's okay that it's a hobby. These days we get into, you're going to give up your job and make cakes for a living. And someone says, no, I just like baking. You know, but we have that either or.
Yes.
Or that all or nothing fixation in these current times. And again, it never used to be like that, you know.
And you have to do something in order to get good at it, can't you? I mean, it's not going to be perfect, you know. If I went back through my book, I could edit it and make it different, make it better, maybe. But it's good enough as it is, you know. I gave myself permission to get it out there. And I was just thinking, because we went to one of her workshops, didn't we? And we wrote, part of that was to imagine like the ultimate head teacher, or the ultimate
somebody in authority that you really respect,
that gives you permission. And you know, our listeners might find that useful, to imagine they're in the head of somebody who can give them permission if they can't give it themselves. But and
that was good, because we wrote ourselves a letter from that person, didn't we?
We did.
So someone that you really respect, and you know, and imagine that they're writing, write yourself a letter from that person, that it's okay that you, whatever your name is, can, it's fine to do the activities which you're really yearning to do.
Exactly.
Or you're doing and you're not quite sure about. But totally okay to go ahead with it.
Exactly. And I think that another reason is about somebody else has done something similar, or you know, I sort of I can't do that because I don't know enough, you know.
That's a big one of resistance, isn't it?
It is. And you know, as you say, the only way to get better is to do it. You can read all the books you like about how to write, or how to sew, or how to bake cakes, but unless you actually bake a cake, you don't know, you're not going to learn, are you? You know.
No, I think I see that a lot with people. I know years ago I had a life coaching business, and certainly in that world, people get stuck on, I need to do another course before I can see clients. I just need to do an NLP course. I just need to do this course. Well, I better not see people until I've done that course. And yes, there is a basic level of responsibility. You don't want to let yourself loose on someone else's life, knowing nothing. But that becomes resistance. It becomes an excuse not to do it. And actually, you need to take the bull by the horns and do it. And find yourself a client and do it for real. And stop hiding behind I don't know enough, because that soon turns to resistance. But she has an interesting section in the book, in this chapter about you know, doing degrees or qualifications in different arts, isn't she?
Mm.
You know, she doesn't have a writing qualification, but she has spent a lot of time studying the masters. You know, she talks about you studying Dickens, and you know, everything you need is out there, or you can do mini courses stuff. And she's not a proponent of getting into debt to get a big certificate, where you still, at the end of the day, you still have to do it. You still have to face your own fears. I mean, yeah, I mean, doing a degree or whatever, it's great. It gives you knowledge. Perhaps helps you get into a routine of doing it. But at the end of the day, you're still on your own, making art or doing whatever it is that you're studying.
Yes, and I think that's that. And also, you know, my book is, there are other people who've written books for childless women, and there are other people who've got stories in them, but they're different to mine, you know. And I could, and also when I do my embroidery, I could look at it and say, well, I can't do it like that. No, but I can do it like this, my own personal style. And you only learn by doing, don't you? I mean, we've talked about this before. You know, I started blogging in 2013, and they were awful, really, to be honest. But I started, you know, I could have sat there and said, I'm not going to do this until I know more, until I'm, you know, but I just got on and did it, you know, because at the end of the day, you do it for you, not for other people, aren't you? That's
and she makes that point as well, that she writes for the sheer delight of herself, and she wrote Eat, Pray, Love to process her own feelings. She didn't, I mean, a lot of people have latched onto it as a book that's really changed their lives or given them permission to go off and do stuff, but she didn't do it for that. She did it for her, and again, she, in this chapter, she talks about not being attached to other people's opinions of your work. And again, Eat, Pray, Love, it's one of those books, people love it or hate it, you know, and people can't stand it in equal measures to how people rave about it. And she must have all of that coming at her. But but again, that can stop you creating, or you can worry about what will people think, or what will my mum say, or you know, or do my friends think they're in my book, or whatever. And you can use that for an excuse not to do it. And she really urges us not to. That, you know, the only person you owe anything to is yourself.
Exactly. And I was going to say something, I've forgotten completely what it was. Self-permission to have forgotten what the thread was.
In a minute.
There's a quote there: create whatever causes a revolution in your heart. And I think
that's amazing, isn't it?
I really love that, actually. And that is that thing, is it just do it. Just do it.
Yeah.
That's that. And she also talks about the joy of puzzling out the work itself.
Yeah.
And I think for me that is a big thing as well, actually. I just started, I'm great for saying, and I've got some embroidery projects, and I'm going to do that. And it's a bit advanced, actually. So, but what gives me the greatest joy is working out how to do it, practicing it, getting, you know, at the end of the day, once I've done it, it won't be perfect. And to be honest, I don't care what other people think. If I'm proud of it, I'm pleased with it, then that's what matters to me. And that's the thing, that sort of, you know, private thing about it's important to me to get it do as well as I can. I think that's the key, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, but it's being true to yourself, isn't it?
Exactly.
And what gets you excited? Because sometimes other people think, you've written this bit, you should go off and do this now, and you're like, I don't want to, you know. So it's been permission to say no to other people's bright ideas.
People said to me after I'd published my book, are you going to do another one? Are you going to do one about men? And I was like, well, I don't know, you know, I don't know. And when if and when I decide to do anything else, then that'll be my decision, and not because anyone has. But yes, I think is that there is we do stop ourselves quite a lot, don't we, from you know, our excuses. One of the things she talks about is, and I've lost it in my note here, is about talking your confidence, and about saying I am creative, I am. And I think I've just wondered how did you feel when you said I am a writer?
I quite liked it, to be honest. I remember when I first started writing 20 years ago, and I did Julia Cameron's The Artist's Way as sort of a self-study, creative sort of healing program over 12 weeks. And I actually really liked it, because I was actually very proud to call myself an artist. I mean, I don't paint, I can't draw for toffee, so I'm not art in the fine art way.
Yeah.
But I realise that yes, I'm creative. I add this. Okay, I'm writing, but it's making art. So to be honest, I've never had a problem with that. And
No.
yeah, I'm a writer, and it is nice now to have published books. It shouldn't make a difference, but it kind of does in terms of it's more tangible to go, bam, here's my book. But actually, if you write, you're a writer. You know, if you paint, you're a painter. If you bake, you're a baker. You know, if you sew, then you know you do sewing, or you're a sort of seamstress or tailor, or yeah, I quite like that. But I think people do get stuck on that. Or again, it's that worthiness thing, isn't it? Or you feel you need to have reached a certain level before you can call yourself that.
Yes.
And actually, if you're doing, and it always for me, and it always comes back. And throughout her book, it's about doing.
It is.
You know, at the end of the day, you have to do the work, and you have to practice your craft, and you have to be established sort of a disciplined pattern that works for you. And then that's actually all you have to do. Exactly. It's no more more complicated than that, but we make it complicated.
And maybe a challenge to those are watching is to start saying, I am creative, I am a writer, I am, and see how it feels. I mean, for me, calling myself a writer, that was, am I? For a bit. Yeah. Somebody else said, it wasn't a friend of mine said, you're a yogi, am I? Yes, I suppose I am. And now, it doesn't bother me, but at first it was, because those identity shifts can be quite big and
yeah, quite powerful,
can't they? But yeah, so I would say to those watching, start saying I am, and see how
how it feels.
And I think you have to keep saying it. She suggests keep saying it every day, several times a day if necessary, till you actually believe it, because it's like, maybe give yourself permission to believe it.
Yeah. Well, I think you need to do that anyway, because resistance is always there. There's our own special brand of fear, our own little fear monster. It doesn't go away. My resistance is getting out of bed in the morning. Every morning it's a struggle with the snooze button, but I do eventually, a bit later than intended, and then I get up and write. So I have to go around that every day.
Yes.
And that's just the way it is. So accepting that, and that it's okay, is also part
I have that with that. I do a few exercises and a bit of yoga as meditation things and I resist it every day, and then but what gets me there is remembering how I feel when I've done it, actually. And that same thing when you're creating something, when you eat the cake, then that's where the joy comes in. Or you give something you've made to somebody else, or whatever. You finish your piece of writing, you post it, but that's where the joy comes in. And I think the key is to remember that and feel it. Really.
For me, I get very grounded when I write. Sometimes things get in the way of writing, or I think I'm tired or whatever, but actually and then sometimes I just straight down and do it, but other times I'm going around the houses, and then I finally get there and I'm like, oh, this is fine. Why don't I do this earlier? But I just think that is the nature of resistance and stuff.
I started
anyway. You have to do it in spite of yourself.
Exactly. I started writing a blog the other day, and it was like pulling teeth. But I did what I could, and I finished it this morning. And I actually think it's okay. But it's good enough. It's good. So takeaways from the permission chapter.
Takeaways. For me, it always comes back to getting on and doing the work. Can I read that line we just talked about? So she talks about other people's reactions and not being put off by that, and there's quite a few pages, and she ends that section. She says, if they don't like it and give you grief, smile sweetly and say politely, go make your own fucking art, then stubbornly keep making yours. And I really like that, because most people who do criticize aren't doing. And you're doing.
Exactly.
Just keep doing.
Because we gave ourselves permission to swear, didn't we, right at the beginning? So we wanted to swear, we will. So that's I think for me that there were I was going to string three of her quotes together, actually, because it is there's creativity is a wild and unexpected bonus from the universe, which I love that.
It's lovely, isn't it?
It is, because it is, and I'm going to let inspiration lead me wherever it wants to lead me. And that again, I just follow that, and I'm going to spend as much time as I can creating delightful things out of my existence, because that's what brings me awake and that's what brings me alive. And again, you know, I love that as well, isn't it? Is it great? Because it does. And I've, in fact, I was a bit slow getting onto reading the chapter because I was too busy being creative this weekend. So
great.
So do it. Just do it.
Yeah, do it and enjoy.
Yeah. Yeah. Give yourself permission to just do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Right then. And we'll give ourselves permission to be back next week, won't we?
We will. Yeah. Bye.
Okay, see you.